Welcome to another episode of the Pennock Knockdown, a podcast where we unpack key strategies and tactics for digital marketing leaders. Today, I've got Leslie Llewellyn with me. She is the founder and principal strategist at Selo Studios. Leslie has over 20 years of experience developing brand positioning and go-to-market strategies for global brands. She's guided numerous clients that do range from startup all the way to established enterprises, category defining brand strategy, integrated marketing execution, and customer journey design. Leslie, it's so exciting to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I know. Well, Leslie and I go back a little ways. We met through Hey Mama in like 2018 or something. So it's nice to uh, have gotten to know you personally and work with you a few times professionally. So really excited to kind of get into it. So my first question for you, Leslie, is tell us what led to the creation of Selo Studios and what you were doing prior to launching the business.
Yeah. Um, so as you mentioned, I came from the advertising world originally, first in Canada, and then I moved to New York for a number of years. And then about, I guess, gosh, it's like 7 years ago now, I started the practice. And so originally I started it because I wanted to have a little bit more flexibility with my little one. But it sort of turned into it evolved from being what was intended to be a creative kind of agency or studio into a consulting practice where I'm now a fractional CMO for a couple of different retainer clients. And so that was really me finding a little bit of a niche. When I would meet with clients when they would first brief me on a project for brand strategy or comms and content architecture, it turned out that there was an opportunity area between what an agency did and what the internal marketing team would need, and the understanding of, based off of their resources, what they were asking for. And what I mean by that is, so a client would come to me and say, "Hey, I need a pay-per-click campaign, or I need a new brand identity." But what I always do during my brand strategy exploration is I try to find what is useful. From a 2 to 5 year standpoint. So, where are we going? What do we need to think about in the future? And I would develop these holistic plans for the year after we did the brand strategy. And the clients always felt like there was a lot more that we could uncover. And so it would continue on into this sort of retainer based head of marketing kind of agreement. So, that's where we are today. That's what I do. And then I have contractors that I use for various different projects that meet the needs of the client.
And I love how you kind of found this white space, as you mentioned, but it was sort of unexpected. That's not really what you thought what you would be doing with your time as a fractional worker or an outside expert helping the businesses. Did you kind of, as you address that, were you at all resistant to the idea of like, well, that wasn't what I had in mind, or did you just kind of go like head first and dive into this slightly augmented approach to what you had in mind?
It was really organic. I think originally I had a bit of imposter syndrome too, because in the agency world, as an account person and a strategist at different agencies, sometimes it feels like you're a cog in a wheel and you do like one sort of function. So I thought, well, if I break out on my own, do I have enough skills to actually bring enough value to clients? And what was turning out to be the most valuable thing was obviously that breadth of experience. And so because I'd worked on a variety of different clients, both B2C and B2B, and I'd also done small agency and large agency. And so there was like a bridge between what are your existing resources today? How big is your marketing team? Do you need outsourced support? Or does your internal team just need some better direction? And so when I would dive into these projects, it really just did feel like, oh, you know what? What they need more than anything is just a bit of direction around how do they use the resources they have today or where they're hoping to go in the future and build something on top of that. So, the other thing that was a big part of my role in the agency world is putting together just statements of work and scope. And so I think a big value from that was to say to the clients, okay, so if you have this existing resources, then let's hire, this type of team that is going to work with what you have today. And then later on, we can bring in maybe a larger agency to start, when you start to build and expand, that can do more breadth of work. So having that experience from the big agency, small agency world really helped a lot too. So it was sort of this like, it just turned into, a more expanded role that was more of a integrated marketing approach as opposed to something that felt like it was a little bit more digital focused or traditional or what have you.
Yeah, that sounds like it adds a ton of value too. So it's great that you kind of pivoted, realized that quickly, and you like are filling more gaps than you initially had in mind. I'd like to move a little bit more tactically. And I know before we hit record, we were talking about marketing initiatives and campaigns that either soared or flopped. And you'd mentioned something in the design B2B space from a event perspective. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your kind of out of the box approach to making sure the event was a success?
Yeah. One of the things that we uncovered recently in an activation event and trade show that we went to, this was for a B2B client. We noticed that the very first thing you're trying to do at one of these trade shows is get noticed, your booth, just in general. People sort of walk by, but unless you look like, you're inviting and approachable, oftentimes they just sort of walk by and keep going. And so we really wanted to make sure that we started as many conversations as possible. And there were so many conversations that were started simply because we designed a really beautiful booth. This particular target audience were designers, so design and the aesthetics of it are exceptionally important to that target audience. So we designed a beautiful booth. They came by and asked us questions about the design of the booth, which really had nothing to do with the SaaS platform necessarily that we were selling. And so once you open up that conversation based off of the aesthetics, we were able to learn so much about the target audience. So I guess the aha moment in that scenario was just, you know what? Sometimes the first thing you need is just to be noticed. And then once you're noticed at those kinds of events, then you can open up a really useful conversation for the sales team.
And getting noticed at the events can be so costly, right? Great booths cost so much money if you have swag or some sort of giveaway option too. So sometimes it's hard to convince teams to even justify being there and having a booth as opposed to like walking the floor. Was this a brand that really wanted to be at the event, or was there some convincing of them to go in the first place?
Well, luckily, this client really saw the value in having a booth. But I will say, having gone to many of these events where we have a booth or we don't. If you don't have a booth, clearly it's a lot more difficult to have those conversations and just sort of, walk up to someone cold and start a conversation without the booth. Um, for this particular client, it was super helpful. It was at the Javits Center. It was a very small booth. We were sort of on the outside periphery, but again, because of that beautiful, partly the location was helpful because we were at a T intersection, but beautiful design really did attract a lot of these designers that we had started opening up conversations with. And we had, the ROI was really good on it. So I will say it proved to be very beneficial and we're doing it again. So
That's good.
yeah, it was definitely, successful enough to entice us to do it again. It was expensive, but it made sense because it was such a great brand awareness vehicle. But also we learned so much about what was going on through the minds of our target because we had all these conversations with them over the course of 2 days. So it was a really great way of also just getting client testimonials, getting to know your target audience really well, and that kind of thing.
Love it. And I think one of the call outs you made of just the spot, like the booth location you have can be so critical to the success or failure of how a show goes too. So it's great you were at a T intersection for
Yeah.
the event.
Yeah, that was helpful for sure.
Awesome. I know you're doing, a decent amount in both B2B and B2C, but I think the next example we were talking about offline was also in the B2B space around like how you're growing brands from SEO success, LinkedIn traffic. So do you want to walk us through a little bit more of the approach you're taking with other brands that maybe don't want to invest a lot into ad spend, or other like partnership activations?
Yeah. So another one of my retainer clients is a professional services client. And so the target audience there is C suite. and that kind of thing. And so with that, we are finding so much success with just really relevant blogs for SEO and a lot of in-person events. I really think now, just with what's going on at the digital age and AI and whatnot, that digital is going to become a little bit more homogenous. And so I think people are really yearning for that in-person contact, and those, yeah, just events that they can attend. So I think experiential is going to become a really important channel. And that really is important to integrate with your SEO, whether it is through just traditional website SEO and that kind of thing, but also through just really relevant content. Yeah, I think that it's going to be so much more important to do in-person events. So that has been pretty successful for us. But, huge numbers isn't our game. We're looking for quality clients, and one piece of business is big for us. So it doesn't work for everything, but for this particular brand, it works exceptionally well. So we've seen a lot of success by, again, just like, and pretty much, with what's going on in the news cycle right now, every day, looking at what's trending and then turning a blog around very quickly that is going to be topical. So, yeah, we've seen a lot of really great SEO success just from that.
A fun way to do marketing, but a hard way to stay ahead, right? When you're kind of, um, you're kind of getting on the bandwagon when it's a positive one for your line of business. How are you giving the message out mainly through LinkedIn for B2B brands, or like how are you leveraging that? Is it coming from the C-suite? Is it coming from the brand's position on their LinkedIn account? What's the mix that you think kind of lands best?
That's a really good question. It's both. So we put content and blogs out on the actual, and yes, through LinkedIn, through our LinkedIn page. But then also the founders of the business, the managing partners, are quite active on LinkedIn, and we see a lot of success through that as well. So we almost dovetail off of one another. So if we do a post on our firm page, they amplify when they do posts on their page. That's them in the community, which they're very active, which is helpful. Then we push that onto our page. But we do see a lot of web traffic through LinkedIn. So yeah, for those professional services businesses, especially when you've got that C-suite target audience, LinkedIn has been really good for us.
What do you think is the right level of I think you were saying that they're pretty active there. Like, what is the right level of activity in your mind? Because I think, I've been told that you should be posting daily, you should be posting maybe a few times a day. And I'm like, that doesn't feel like me. So I'm wondering if you have any like guardrails that you usually advise the leadership team and then even the brand account to be posting from a frequency perspective.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question too. Um, I don't think, because through social, we're looking at it through our own lens, and we don't know how much. I mean, we all get a lot of content, so we know that it's a very busy platform. Any of our social media platforms are super busy. So, as much as you think is a lot, isn't necessarily a lot to others because they're not getting everything that you're posting. So it is definitely good to have a pretty good cadence. But I mean, the other thing is you can burn a lot of time and energy and resources on social that doesn't necessarily equate to conversion. So you do have to have that integrated plan that's using some of that content through social for awareness purposes, but you have to look at it really as top of funnel. It's all about awareness and about, brand persona, essentially. So you have to look at it from that perspective. It's a personal view, it's a personal um, perspective on the brand. And so I think for conversions, at least, again, for a B2B crowd, it's not necessarily where you're going to get all the conversions, but you do need both. And so having a search campaign alongside that is really helpful too, because then the clients are getting both that awareness through social from the top of funnel, but then also that mid funnel experience is being crossed off through the search strategy.
Yeah. And how big of an influence do you think it is for, let's say you've got a sales team that's doing cold outreach and like they get a bite and maybe the prospect isn't sure to book a call yet. Do you think the use case is usually that they're going to socials in addition to the website to like validate the brand? Or like, I guess when you think of brands that don't have big presence today or awareness on social, what is like, how much time should they spend there? Because as you mentioned, it can be a total time suck. It could be someone's full-time job, even at a small business.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always important to have a social presence just so that when it does come to the actual decision-making process, if you're looking for switchers, if you're trying to take business from other professional services, firms or brands, um, that is a platform that is going to help with that decision. So I do think it is important, but again, none of these things can be in an echo chamber. I really do think that integrated plans are the way to go. So yeah.
Love that. Tell us like a peeve of yours, like some brands you come into and like something that's often overlooked or missed, and you're like, if only more brands started out with the right emphasis on XYZ, things would have been different.
Yeah, that's another very good question. Um, I mean, I think it just goes back to actually that original kind of aha moment that I had when I started working with independent clients is that even though we think we might have a bit of a brief together, having a really rock solid brief, whether it's like, a business plan that equates to a creative brief, those things are so important because you have to have some kind of, creative contract, if you will, that you're trying to meet. And I think oftentimes that gets overlooked because there maybe isn't ample times we're trying to do something quickly or what have you. But it's so important to know what that goal is at the end of the day. Like, what is our North Star and why are we doing it? And so that's going to change so many of us and what we might decide is our key insight that we want to follow. But yeah, just setting that foundation at the beginning, I think, again, we all try to get there. But I think it's really important to spend the time to do it instead of trying to do something quickly. Let's make sure we have that strategic foundation in place before we do something because you can spend so much time just churning and burning and, trying to create a campaign quickly simply because it's topical or it's timely for seasonal purposes. But if it doesn't land, then you've wasted a lot of time and resources where you could have been more successful. So I think that's one of them. But then also just making sure that the senior team at the firm or for the company is in alignment because that's another one that they might hire a consulting firm or they might hire an agency to do something, but they don't all agree why they're there, or what that North Star might be at the end of it. So asking for what is success at the end of the day? What is that news headline that we're looking for? That's also a nice way of sort of filtering it down to one statement that can be helpful. So yeah, just like nothing new really other than setting that strategic foundation is so important.
I think that's a really good call out because it gets lost so often. So, like the document that is a single source of truth that probably outlines the brief, your news headline, so important to just simply put it out there. But then, yeah, working with partners, internal teams who get it, because, in a digital space like we're in where you can track everything until you're blue in the face, you've got teams sometimes that are just like pouring data at you, and you're like, how does this get me to that one objective? Give
Yeah.
me a clear path to like what the next step is. And sometimes it's like, well, here's the data. And I think I get precisely what you're talking about because we see it so often.
Yeah. I think sometimes companies can also get a little bit hung up on the price discussion. So they've got a new product, or maybe it's the same product, but they're just going to put it on sale or what have you, as if that's, maybe the key value proposition. That is not a value proposition. Putting something on sale or having it as like, a bit of a cost consideration is not a value proposition. What does that provide the target audience and making sure that their, reason to believe is another one that we called it, but it's actually a nuance of the same thing that's important. Why does it matter to them other than just price? Because there's lots of brands and competitors that are going to be able to compete on price. And yes, that is going to become more important to people given the economic landscape right now. But that is not the thing that's going to make them stop on their tracks, and it's going to have some sort of emotive response. And I think that's also where the human interaction above AI is going to be so important because us humans who are developing this creative are going to be able to think about that emotive response, I think, a little bit more prominently.
Yep. Super, super true. Yes, a promo is not a unique selling point. I love that.
Yeah.
Super, super true. Great. So if you're putting your predictive hat on, what do you think we'll be doing differently if we're having this discussion a year from now? Like what are you excited about that you might tap into a little bit more, or like new corner things that you want to become mainstream?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I said this earlier, but I really do feel like the experiential element of branding is just going to be so much more important. I think people also, because so many of us are working from home now, and that's a luxury and a privilege in many ways, but also we're craving human interaction and, to be social. And I think we're also resonating with brands that value that as well. So I think what I'm going to be looking for my own, like, how do I AI proof my own experience, my own role, will be what is it that AI is not going to replace? And in person social interactions cannot be replaced by that. And I do think that it's going to become more and more important to people. So in a year from now, I think you're going to see brands doing a lot more events, in person, pop ups, things like that, where they're just going to have, again, that more emotive response from their target, which is going to be more memorable than anything they're going to get online.
Yeah. Oh, love that. Yeah, I'm with you in just this basement office, just getting through the days, and sometimes I'll go weeks without seeing colleagues in real life. So, understand the interest and the growing interest in getting back to seeing people in the human flesh.
Yeah.
So, if you were to rewind back to graduating college and just kind of getting started, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, well, first of all, it's okay if you are in your first or second year of college and you're not entirely sure exactly what you're going to do. I think one of the best things that I did was I interned at a couple of different places throughout my college years and then afterwards. I think that was really helpful in different industries that was somewhat related to my field, which was communications. But I shadowed a news anchor for a day, and I interned at an ad agency, and I did some interning at a law firm. And, there was a few things that I did, but it really helped to solidify what I wanted to do, which ended up, I think, being, my passion, honestly. I'm really lucky that I do something that I love. So that would be it. But also just to say that there's no big rush. So I also took a year off to backpack between university and then starting my career. And, that was an amazing city, and no one's gonna know if you're graduating at 21, 22, or 23. It's not gonna make a difference in your professional career really that much. So, take that time off, ponder, think about what you've learned, and apply it into the real world. Yeah. So I think I would just cheer myself on to say, good for you for taking that year off because it really was helpful in discovering yourself and what you actually want to do.
Yeah. I think I was the opposite. I was so eager to start working that I was like anything to shortcut the process to work. Like I'm so eager to do, whether that's like more school in the summer so that I can graduate more quickly. And yeah, like it's really hard to stop once you start, right? Like I don't think I've taken more than like a month off between gigs. And that's not enough time to backpack too far, I suppose. So I haven't had the experience you had.
Even doing it for a month or two, I think is pretty amazing. There's a lot of, I think, discovery about yourself that happens during those processes. So even if you can only do it for the summer, it's totally worth it. But yeah, it's was lucky to be able to do that for sure.
What a plug to get out into nature. I love it. Well, Leslie, this has been really great. I appreciate you coming on and the time. And for all the listeners who are still with us to the end, thank you so much. Leslie's a breath of fresh air and has a lot of good POVs on what to do from a brand and strategy side. So appreciate it all. And until next man,
Thanks, Nikki. It was fun.
thank you.